Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from Skeena Gold and Silver. I think you all remember Skeena as being known as Skeena Resources. Company has rebranded to now Skeena Gold and Silver, traded on the TSX and the NYSE under the symbol SKE. We're going to go through more a big picture overview of the company here as the company is moving through the development stage at the Eskay project in the Golden Triangle of B.C. I've had the company on a number of times as this project was being de-risked, and now we have a lot to talk about in terms of the financing package that was signed last year and the early works activities that are underway. I'm chatting with Galina Meleger, the Vice President of Investor Relations at Skeena Gold and Silver. Galina, let's just start off quickly with that name change. Again, it's really highlighting the fact that this isn't just a gold company. There's a gold and silver, both very significant components for the project. Take us through that name change, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Corey. It's so great to be here. I know you guys at Correlin Economics have been following Skeena for a really long time. Again, it's my first time on the show just because I joined the company last summer, but I am so excited to walk everybody through the progress because there's been some really solid progress. On the name change, so going from Skeena Resources to Skeena Gold and Silver, we really wanted to draw visibility to the significant silver component. I mean, technically speaking, we are a legendary, world-renowned gold asset, and investors appreciate, our foundational gold reserves. But what some people don't know is that the value split at Eskay Creek is about 65% gold and 35% silver. But because of how big Eskay is, because of that scale, that 35% byproduct credit on the silver actually makes us a very significant pure silver mine as well. So if you know the silver space in years 1 through 5, where our production and ounces are elevated, we're going to be producing 9.5 million ounces of silver, which is very meaningful. It's actually more silver than Aya, and we ultimately thought that the fundamentals for silver are very exciting. And so we wanted to draw visibility to ultimately propel our re-ratings going forward. And also, that silver, when it's that significant, is a very meaningful byproduct credit on our unit costs. So overall, I think it was a very smart move to rebrand to Skeena Gold and Silver, albeit subtle, but meaningful.
All right, let's now recap 2024, and really the major news event that came in June was the project financing, US $750 million. This from Orion Resource Partners. There's an equity component, a gold stream, a secured loan, as well as an overrun facility. Take us through the importance of this financing package, please.
Yeah, so it was very well received in the marketplace. We announced in late June of last year, and as you say, it was a big step forward in terms of de-risking. So that 750 million US is over a billion Canadian, right? And so you have to remember that our projected estimated initial capex is 713 Canadian. We went with Orion because they were willing to give us a significant amount of funds ahead of final permits so that we can stay on track with the project timeline. And it begs the question, like, why would Orion do that? So the reason is because they had been involved with Pretium, which used to own Brucejack, which is located in close proximity in the Golden Triangle to Eskay. And they had success with financing Pretium. So they were looking to replicate the play, but more importantly, they got comfortable with the permitting regime in BC and obviously the geology in the Golden Triangle. So the deal that we put together was phenomenal. When you look at the various components, the equity piece was the smallest out of the three, and it was done at a premium to market as opposed to a discount like your traditional bought deals are, which obviously really shows Orion's willingness to come into the name. And then the gold stream for 200 million US, we've started drawing down on it this year. The idea is that the 200 million US will take us through the development activities for 2025. And we're basically going to be drawing down in tranches of 50, 50, 50, right? And what we like about the gold stream is that there's a buyback provision where we buy back 2/3 of the stream at an 18% imputed IIR. So that was really important to us. And the gold stream doesn't touch the silver, right? Our investors told us, don't touch the silver, leave it untouched. And it's actually kind of funny because when you look at the financing space, companies do it the other way around where they actually stream the byproduct, right? But for us, we've left it untouched. So the equity piece and the gold stream, so that's 300 million US ahead of final permits. And then there's, after that, we've got the senior secured loan for 350 million US. It's SOFR plus 7.75%. And there's a 1% standby fee and no break fee, meaning that between now and drawdown on the debt, if we find more favorable terms in the marketplace via a lower cost of capital, we can go ahead and swap that out. And the same applies to the cost contingency for 100 million, which is in the same shape and form as the gold stream.
Okay, thanks for breaking all that down. I know that lack of a break fee there, that has caught a lot of people's attention when we were talking about this last year. See if you can get a cheaper cost of capital here. Let's talk about permitting then. You touched on it a couple of times that this project financing came before permitting. What permitting updates can you give us then?
Yeah, so the permitting side of the business right now is the biggest catalyst for Skeena. We formally entered the EA process, which so the EA stands for Environmental Assessment Application, which is the biggest chunk of work that a company needs to complete to say that they initiate full-scale construction. We submitted the initial application in August of 2024. And how it works in BC is each application kicks off a 180-day review period. So we closed out round 3 just recently. And we will be resubmitting our final application in March of 2025, which then kicks off another 180-day review period. The comments from the initial application inform the final application. Just to give you an idea of kind of the effort involved in these applications and the due diligence level, like this was a 15,000 page application that we submitted for the initial. And all of the comments that have come back, we feel that, they're addressable. Nothing's been surprising us. Everything is, being addressed. And basically, we could be potentially in possession of an EA certificate in, Q4 of 2025 if all of the stars aligned. But having said that, our discussions with government and particularly provincial, right, because we have federal substitution, we actually received early works authorizations in June of 2024 to go ahead and start advancing early works activities, which is an example of the government really wanting to work with us. And so I can speak to kind of all of the early works activities that we did this summer, but then just a quick note again on permitting. Also, in December of 2024, we received our bulk technical sample permit. And that one was really important because it actually grants us all necessary authorizations to proceed with required development activities in 2025. And you can actually get quite far with the bulk technical sample. So we can actually get as far as, erecting the mill building. And so we basically now have on this bulk sample permit approval to proceed with all development activities in 2025.
So then what comes next here, Galina? What are some of these early works activities that the company really needs to undertake to keep this project moving forward towards production?
So our early works program basically, I would say, comprised of 4 key areas. So firstly, accessing the technical sample area. This means initiating small-scale mining activities inside of the proposed pit area using small-scale equipment. We also advanced 2 main roads, one that connects to the tailings facility and the other to the mine infrastructure pad. These are pilot roads. These roads will get wider as the larger equipment arrives, but they were advanced. We also advanced the infrastructure pad area by clearing the area, pouring concrete, installing grouted anchors. And I should point out that the earthworks were self-performed in-house by the on-site project development team. We also started the civil works for the Volcano Creek substation area to connect to the power source so that we can essentially have clean power during the construction phase and the operations phase. And then just lastly, on the procurement and engineering front, we actually secured all of the major mill equipment totaling over $85 million worth of equipment, which is right in line with the estimates outlined in the DFS. So those were the areas that we started work on in 2024. And what you'll see in 2025 is just a continuation of these items. So obviously advancing the technical sample area, continuing to work on the roads, continuing to advance the infrastructure pad area, connecting the power from the Volcano Creek substation and so forth. But it's been a very productive year at site. And I think 2025 will continue to be just laser focused on execution.
Now, in terms of news flow from all these activities, what can we expect? What can you news release? What's important for investors to pay attention to make sure everything is moving along according to plan?
I have to say that as we continue to draw down on the gold stream, we will news release that. And so the messaging to the market is that we're continuing to advance the project because we are spending funds. So that's key. The next major catalyst for us will be the submission of the final application for the EA. And again, as I said, the anticipated timeline is end of March. So there would be a news release with that. And again, that shows continued momentum on permitting, which is really important.
Okay, let's also talk valuation then. That's a key for us to discuss here. The company valued right now Canadian about $1.6 billion. Now, again, you have the cash or the facility available to build this asset. Give us your value proposition here. Explain to us where the company stands and where the valuation could go from here.
We get asked the question all the time. What is the company really worth? How do I think about valuation? Hey, am I late to the party? Because I noticed that the share price has had a good run. And it's actually a very simple question to answer because when you look at our annual production size of coming out of the gates at 450,000 ounces of gold equivalent metal, there is not a lot of companies in the marketplace on a single asset that have that production level. There just isn't. So there's only a few that we can look to for comps in terms of what they're trading at, and the one that we talk about frequently is Lundin Gold with Fruta del Norte out of Ecuador. I would say they are how do you want to say it? Like the sector's golden child, right? Like they have done a really good job. They're trading at a PNAV of 1.3 times and a market cap just shy of 9 billion Canadian versus us, you mentioned 1.6 Canadian. When you look at their production profile, we're similar. They're a cash flow story. We're a cash flow story. They're in Ecuador. We're in BC. They don't have silver. We have silver, right? So there's a lot of similarities that one can look to. Another one that you can also look to is Artemis Gold. They're here in BC. They are trading at a PNAV of 0.7 times, market cap of, just shy of 4 billion Canadian. They're at an inflection point because they're commissioning right now. So all eyes on Artemis. But again, there's another comp with a $4 billion market cap and a PNAV of 0.7. But when we talk about the Lassonde curve, if we were to, and I should say, okay, our stock has followed the Lassonde curve to a T. So we had the discovery, stock went up, put out a feasibility, stock went down, put out a financing, stock went up. Now we've come out of the valley and now we're climbing the heart of the Lassonde curve, right? We just started climbing it. If we plug in spot prices today, because that's personally how I look at valuations, we're trading at a PNAV of 0.4. And because we have a world-class asset that, from a gold perspective, conservatively speaking, we feel we can get to full NAV, right? Because it's a world-class gold asset. And because we have that silver, we think conservatively speaking, we can get to 1.2 times NAV. And so if we're at 0.4 NAV, then ultimately that means that the opportunity from where we are today is 3 or 4-fold. So there's one aspect, right? And then I think when you talk about valuations, there's two ways to get the stock up. One, climb up the curve of the Lassonde, or two, improve the NPV. And we are doing both. So we will come out with a study on the other side of the EA in say 15 to 18 months, where we actually incorporate some additional value adds in the portfolio. So whether it be adding an asset like SNP and back bolting it into the production profile, steepening the pit walls. But I would say the biggest value add for us is monetizing the critical metals that are inherent in the deposit. Because right now we've actually only modeled out the gold and the silver, but we have significant quantities of antimony, lead, and zinc. And if you look at what, for example, even antimony is worth today, and the amount of zinc that we have, 200,000 tons, that's real money. And so we think that by monetizing the critical minerals, which are inherent in the bulk concentrate, we can just continue to increase payabilities and, add close to $1 billion of NPV just by doing so. So I think the valuation upside is a very strong part of the story. And we only have 107 million shares outstanding. We're over 75% institutionally held. So when you have a share count that is that tight and so much of it is locked up institutionally, it doesn't take that much for the stock to move, right? Because the float is so tight. So I think right now the biggest catalyst for us is permits. And that's why I'm always saying that we're kind of on the sweet spot of the development timeline, because we're just starting to invite re-rate capital ahead of these final permits that we're waiting for.
All right, Galina, look, we've talked all about Eskay Creek, and this is the focus for the company, moving this into production. I know it takes a while to build these mines, but having the financing in place, you're already starting that work. Let's talk some other opportunities for the company, starting with the exploration side of things. Recently, you had some exploration results from the KSP project, which is more of a regional target for the company. What can we expect on the exploration side of the company?
Sure. So, I will just caveat that by saying that our focus is now really on development and getting to the finish line and execution with Eskay. But yes, we did do some drilling on KSP. It's a regional target that's about 24 kilometers away from Eskay and 5 from SNP. It's our first ever drill program. And basically, we've come out with the discovery of a new gold copper porphyry system. The headline intercept was 0.7 grams per ton over I think over 350 meters. So, good continuity and a substantial volume of mineralized material that's relatively close to surface. Early stage, but very promising.
Okay. Now, another aspect that we should talk about is a recent investment into TDG Gold. This company holds project in the Toodoggone area, which is just a little bit east of the Golden Triangle. In BC, it's come a lot more onto investors' radars after a couple very impressive drill results from that area, not necessarily from TDG, but from a neighbor of that company. What's the strategy here for Skeena investing in TDG?
Okay, so this is very exciting. And so clearly you've been following the AMark discovery. I think they put out their drill results January 17th, and then their stock basically like more than doubled at the Vancouver investment conferences. Their booths were slam packed. And it was based on this Aurora discovery. It's currently BC's hottest exploration story. They basically outline a high grade, rich gold, copper, silver porphyry. And when any technical person looks at those drill results, they look promising because they're high grade, close to surface, and appear to be amenable to mining just from a very early look, right? AMark is an HDI company, and they have a JV agreement with Freeport, where Freeport can basically earn in 70% of the project by contributing up to 110 million. So even just by looking at that commitment alone, you go, okay, this is meaningful because they have big players with vested interest. So, but here's how TDG comes into play. So the Aurora discovery is less than 200 meters away from the border of TDG's claims. And the geochemical and geophysical data indicates that there's potential for the mineralized trend to continue over onto TDG's 100% own claims, right? Whereas remember, A-Mark has this agreement where Freeport will likely own 70%. So I think the way I look at it, the interesting piece about it is that from the time that the discovery was announced, how quickly Skeena was able to position ourselves at the forefront of one of British Columbia's most exciting exploration stories. There's got to be something that's said for smart management team that can get ahead of these opportunities. But basically, we took the investment into the company by purchasing 22 million common shares of TDG. We're giving them the Sophia property, which is an asset that we own, plus $7 million. And we're basically owning 13% of the company. So the Sophia property will allow them to expand their land holdings, and then the funds will basically provide them with funds to basically drill and further validate the Greater Shasta project. But I think that this is just a really exciting opportunity for us in always going with our approach of making strategic equity investments in projects with high geological potential. And we were able to get in there really quick, because when you think about kind of a great way to have exposure to the discovery, it's actually, potentially, owning shares in a company like TDG.
Okay. Galina, thank you very much for this update. We covered a lot here because there's a lot going on with the company. Again, mostly focused, pretty much a lot focused on the building of the Eskay Creek project. I'm going to post a link to the company's website in the show notes so you all can read over the recent news releases. Send me any questions you have for Galina, and I'll get her back on the show to keep us up to date on how the build is going at Eskay Creek. Galina, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much, Corey. Talk soon.